Hello everyone and welcome to the Knowledge Pool, your source for everything regarding the rules of Magic the Gathering. Today we'll be talking about regeneration and the reason why it was removed from the game after some years. Let's begin. For those of you who are newer in the game, regeneration and the regenerate keyword used to be a thing that appeared in every set, an evergreen mechanic, essentially like flying, death touch, first strike, lifelink. But it was later down the road removed from the game entirely, and that's because people were not understanding it or using it incorrectly, because while it does what you think it does, it sets it up in a very weird way, which we'll go over soon. So let's begin with the rules breakdown. So in order to understand the regenerate ability, we will take a card for example like Gorilla Chieftain, which is a vanilla, but it has also the ability for 1 degree to regenerate. Now, from now on, when you see regenerate on any card, you can pretty much take that regenerate away and replace it with the following text. The next time this permanent would be destroyed this turn, instead remove all damage marked on it and tap it. And if it was an attacking or blocking creature, remove it from combat. Now, you probably understand why it was keyworded in that way, because otherwise the text would be too big to fit on a card along with other abilities. Now, we need to set a point here, because this is where essentially the problems with this mechanic start to appear. Regenerating something doesn't do what the text I just read you does. It simply sets up this effect for this turn. So, that is known as a regeneration shield, which means that all it does is creates a replacement effect that waits for the event of that replacement effect, which would be the destruction of the card that was regenerated, to happen. So you can also set up multiple activations of this card that have one shield for each card. And each time your card will be destroyed, you can essentially use one of those shields. This was really important because you could set up multiple regenerations and save your creature multiple times a turn. Now, there are also spells that do the regenerate thing, like regeneration, its namesake, which just regenerates a creature. This does exactly the same thing as the ability. It gives it a regeneration shield, and even Bulgaritan that generates multiple creatures does exactly the same thing. They don't have to regenerate at the point you activate the card. What the card does and the activate ability is that it creates regeneration shields, and that's where most people got confused with this mechanic, because in your mind you go like, okay, they try to Doomblade my creature or do something else, or lightning bolt it, I will use a regenerate to save it. What many people didn't realize, you could actually set up the regeneration and wait for it to occur. Also, there is a small amount of cards that do not have an activated or triggered ability or a spell that regenerate things, like Nightfall Holy Nimbus. They usually all have the same effect, where if they would be destroyed, you regenerate them. These act almost the same as the activate abilities and the spells, with the difference is that these effects actually work the way you think, which means that instead of having that next time, which sets the replacement effect, they have the effect that you remove all the damage marked on them, tap them, and remove to combat if they're attacking a blocking creature instead. So they function as you would think, or as most players thought the regeneration mechanic actually worked. For all those reasons and that rule baggage that you had to essentially know to actually use regeneration properly, or know exactly how the spells work, they remove the mechanic as a thing, and they may only appear in some cards in the future, but it's probably not likely. Also, there were some effects in the past, because they had to somehow counter regeneration, that wouldn't allow something to regenerate. For example, Wrath of God reads that destroyed creatures, they cannot be regenerated. What that means is that it actually doesn't prevent you from activating an activate ability or a regeneration shield, but it means that essentially bypasses those seals. For example, let's say you had Castle Troll, you had regenerated him 5 times, had activated the ability 5 times, and someone played Wrath of God. No one of those 5 seals you had created would be able to block the Wrath of God. So the Wrath of God sweeps past seals and gives you Tron. And also one thing you need to know again is that the term bury used to be used before the destroy cannot be regenerated and essentially meant the same thing. Bury is that it is destroyed and cannot be regenerated. Also, there are some cards like Renit that allow you to regenerate permanents. When you regenerate something that is not a creature, it works exactly the same way, but obviously you won't be able to put it in combat. So the remove all damage and attacking blocking creature thing doesn't happen, but you still have to tap it. So for example, if you renewed to it a Smothering Tide was about to be disenchanted, you still would tap the enchantment, even though it actually doesn't matter. It matters for its game state. But Regenerate hasn't completely phased out of the game, it just changed its form. And now it's pretty much the bare bones of the ability in creatures like Dread Sentinel, where you have an effect where you tap them and they gain Indestructible, which does something like the regeneration did, but it's not a replacement effect anymore, it's just an activate ability. It does not create a shield, it happens at that time, but it still technically functions the same way because you can still use it while attacking, because tapping the creature is not a requirement to activate the ability, it's just part of the effect. And also they gain Indestructible at the end of turn, so you don't technically have to activate it multiple times like the generation would. This was their fix essentially. I won't be surprised if I see it keyworded in the future, but they probably won't do it. And also one reason they didn't do it like this before, it was because Indestructible wasn't a keyword before 2013, it was like a state of the card. And then they changed the rules to make it an actual keyword. And so that's the end result of the card. We still don't see it as often because it creates weird scenarios, but just so you know, when you see this ability, imagine being regenerate and be functionally the same thing, not exactly that, and also you now see it only on creatures, not on permanents. And that was all about regenerate and regeneration as a mechanic. Hope you learned something today that you can use if you see regenerate in maybe a modern game, an old school game, or in a commander game. Thank you all very much for watching. See you in the next video.